Hi, everybody. Welcome to Skeptic Haven's talk show. I'm Stephanie Helms. And with me tonight is Joe, the Kentucky atheist, and we're going to be talking about speaking across border lines, speaking between communities. How do we do that? Why we should.
This is Skeptic Haven. Let's talk.
Hey, Joe. Good to see you. Thanks
how
for
are
coming.
you?
This will be.
Yeah.
I'm all right. I'm all right. It's been a rough couple of days, but I'm all right generally. Too hot. Too much going on. Too much monkey business around here for me to get involved. You know what I mean? Or know that song?
I do know
Good
what you
song.
mean, actually.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that.
Yeah. So we were talking. We were just sort of having a side chat about, how do we have constructive conversations? Matter of fact, today on the line there was a caller who was very upset about Matt Dillahunty's approach to things, and Seth Andrews got a very different approach. Was the co-host, and it was a very interesting conversation. I screened the call and I thought it was going to go haywire, and it didn't. It was great. And it's really kind of I don't know. I think it's kind of like what works for what person too, and the situation that you're in. You know? I think you're muted, Joe.
Yeah. Can you
No,
hear me?
you're good. Yep, gotcha.
Okay. Yeah, I think it does take multiple perspectives to really have a clear conversation, especially if it's adversarial to begin with. And sometimes we just gotta listen, you know. Just stop and listen to what the other person is saying and respond to that rather than with our predetermined wishes and such.
That's true. It's I know I'm bad at it sometimes. Sometimes I can get the dander up or the whatever it may be, and just roll. I try to catch myself on that from time to time. Try to do that. Try to be, try to learn from bad behavior on my part.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think we can all be guilty of bad behavior time to time, and the important thing is can we recognize that maybe wasn't the best approach, and then move on from it and continue the conversation in a productive way. And this is not always the easiest thing to do. Much easier said than done, but we got to try.
It is, and it's sometimes the abrupt approach is shock treatment, and the shock treatment works. Like, boom, stop, think about what you're doing. But especially if you're reaching across communities, it's incredibly important, I think, to listen. And not assume what you think you know about a community that you really don't know much about. Because if you're going to make mistakes, people are going to make mistakes, and as usually, if you're having a good faith conversation with someone who is not a member of your community, it's but you might be tending to make assumptions. Somebody just yelled in my ear, "Talk show." This is a talk show,
Yeah.
everybody. So
Yeah.
we want to hear from you. We want to take some calls from you. So please don't be shy. Sky's the limit as far as I don't know. We can talk about this subject. We can talk about any old thing you want to, as far as I'm concerned. I think Joe's
Sure.
pretty friendly. If you want to get yelled at, hey, let's see. This is the right room for an argument. Come on in. We're happy to give you one. Or if you just want a friendly chat, give us a call. The number is 984-789-4787. It's scrolling by down on the bottom of the screen. You can call in on the World Wide Web at www.colinstudio.com /Skeptic Haven, and we'll take that call and we'll have a nice little chat. We'll have all kinds of fun.
Yeah, definitely.
In the meanwhile.
Yeah. Yeah, so a lot of times when we're talking across communities, I think that we have to lay down what it is, our preconceived notion of what we're going to get from that conversation, and just accept it for what it is. And again, goes back to just listening to what the other person has to say and considering that in more ways than just how you feel about it, in a bigger picture. And again, these things aren't always easy to do. And when we talk about talking across communities like this, it's generally a difficult conversation to have sometimes, so it can be hard to do. But I feel like if you're actually searching to have a productive conversation and to understand the other person, then you have to kind of lay down those biases and just listen for a little bit, and sometimes reflect on how it would affect you, or if it was the other way. And that's hard to do for some people, and it's hard for anybody to do in all situations.
Oh yeah, it's keeping your ears open, your mind open, your thoughts in line. And if you if you misunderstand something, you can like ask for clarification. It's like, I don't really get it. That's always cool.
And don't be afraid to say, I don't know.
The other thing. Yeah, and like, I'm here to learn.
Definitely.
Are there
I try to find... Go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask, are there any kind of difficult conversations that you've had? No, I'm trying to figure out exactly how to phrase this.
Careful.
Are there? Well, no. It's like. Are there subjects that you think are particularly? I think that's what I was getting to. Are there subjects that you think are particularly difficult to engage with? I mean, flat Earth, that sort of thing. I mean, in the atheist community, we often have these discussions about, well, religion, lack thereof, justification of beliefs, etc., and so forth. And that's one area, but are there others that maybe just as skeptics we should be thinking about having good conversations with folks about?
Well, I think if you're going to consider yourself to be skeptical, then you need to approach other conversations that way. And while we can point to all the reasons, the factual reasons that something like flat Earth is an unreasonable position, the person that holds that position has reasons that they feel that that's the case, and it may be important to get down to the bottom of that rather than just bring your arguments and be ready to make your points. It's easy to go into a conversation thinking, oh, I already know, I've got this, I'm gonna go in and just wait for my turn to talk and say my piece, rather than try to understand the person that you're talking to and where they're coming from. Now, that doesn't affect whether what they're saying is true or not necessarily, but sometimes it helps you to better pinpoint where the failure is in communication, or where the failure is in a thought process. And it may turn out that it's your own failure and not theirs. Even if you're right, it can be your own failure to understand where they're really coming from. One thing that I disagree with a lot of the atheist community about, for example, and brings up problems, is that I think that in a not considering any other situation, that like atheism is reasonable and Christianity is irrational. But all things given, though, I don't think Christianity is an irrational position, because it's the culture we're raised in and indoctrinated to. I would expect that most people end up picking up that belief. And since I have shared in that, it's easier for me to have those conversations about things like that. But not everybody shares that.
Well, you know what? We have a call, a cult examiner, she, her, from Southern Appalachia. Oh, here we go. Uncertain, effective communication between groups, bridging the gap. Let's see what we can do. A cult examiner, can you hear us? All good?
I can hear you.
Awesome.
Can you hear
Well,
me?
thanks so much for. Yeah, we got you good. Thanks so much for calling. Let's talk. So let's talk. What's your question?
Well, I want to say, I want to commend you. I'm highly impressed with you all wanting to do these lives and to encourage healthy communication across communities. That's greatly needed. I dropped into Joe's channel earlier tonight where he was talking about the same thing. And I think it's beautiful. And I'm here to add, what wisdom I have. I'm 48 years old. I've been studying the occult, well, religion really, for like 25, 26 years. And I've been in and out of a lot of different types of communities. And I think what's needed right now in the world is the willingness to open up and listen, but also the willingness to be wrong and to admit when we're wrong. But it seems like so much harm and damage is being done with a lot of lack of self-reflection and inner work, as far as working through our own past and our own traumas. That seems to be hard, and we carry over those traumas into conversations that we have with people around us.
Absolutely, I agree. I think that we have to be aware of that too when we go into these conversations, to be aware of the past experiences and trauma in many cases that does inform our conversations with people.
Yeah,
Exactly.
hurt people do tend to hurt. Sorry for stepping on you. It was a bit of I always have to get used to the idea that there's a delay here. So, My apologies. What do you think? What do you
No,
think
that's
about that? What do you think about that, Occult Examiner? What do you think about that take?
I think being aware of our triggers is very important. I know like in the Discord servers, the channels are set up to where, like when I was in, it was just politics, to where like if you did not want to talk about politics, if you knew that politics was triggering to you, you did not go into that channel and interact. You could still interact with the community though, right? But you did not have to be triggered by the politics. So say that, and that can go with any subject or any area that is triggering. So it's like a healthy places to express triggers, but also maybe healthy places to heal the triggers, to acknowledge the triggers as well. And that could maybe even be in the same space. But self-awareness and knowing what triggers us, right? Now, if we know going into a conversation that maybe we have I'm neurodivergent, I have ADHD and autism. So I know that if I don't say something real quick, I'll forget it real quick. So I often interrupt, and I hate that I do that because I don't want to seem rude and I don't want to put anybody off. But I also know if I don't say it, I'm going to forget it. I had to realize that I wasn't the only one that way. Other people are that way too. And other people need to hurry up and say something often, and they don't mean to be rude, and they're not being shitty. Oh, excuse me. I don't know if we can touch there, but
You can say shitty.
Okay.
You can say just on anything. We're more than 5 minutes in, so we're probably not going to get demonetized for saying cuss words.
Good. But how are we going to realize our triggers though, right? The only way we're going to know what our triggers are is to be triggered. So I have been learning a lot from this man called Chase Hughes, who is like the #1 brainwashing programmer in the government. You all should really look up his work, but he talks about how we need to realize what our triggers are so we can definitely move past them. But then there are people who are trained to test your triggers, like government, politicians, Hollywood, whatever, you want to go there. They're trained to push and trigger you so you don't even realize you're being re-triggered and re-traumatized.
Yeah, well, actually, that's the whole point of things. Like, isn't advertising built around the idea of triggering? Not in a negative sense necessarily, but in a positive sense. You need that brand of toothpaste you're using. That's no good. Look, you want the finest cup of coffee. You need chock full of nuts. The heavenly coffee. Better coffee a millionaire's money can't buy. That's a trigger. That's a trigger. It's like, I want to go with this. But there are also the negative triggers, and I think that there's a lot of negative triggering going on in politics right now, and in intersocial relationships, and in discussions about God. Now, tell me to shut up if I'm going on too long. I'm tired of the God conversation because I don't think it matters that much, honestly, and I think it's been going on for 12,000 years, at least, that we know about. Because it's in writing, The Babylonians were saying, your God sucks. And it's like, no, you're fine, all this, that, and the other thing. I personally, I don't care too much about the God conversation, except insofar as what the God is telling you to do. If the God is telling you to be a jackass.
I can jive with that, yeah. Yeah.
So that's where I'm at. I don't know how you feel about that. I'll shut up for a bit.
Yeah, so I think whenever
because I went through a hard time, stressful time, about 10 years ago, and I I was like, okay, I'm just removing a lot of things so I can heal. And I went on a 3-day fast where I only had water and I didn't sleep. And I had a lot of external stimulation removed. And I tripped so hard. I seen Narasimha, the Hindu deity. I knew then that God was all in my head. And that blew me away. And yeah, I'm sick of talking about it too, because one, I know he's in my head. What vision he is or she is or they do or take on is in my head, like any good psychedelic journey, right? And I am sick and tired of hearing about it, because it's been nothing but a means to control the people for as far back as we have like written history. So I'm absolutely sick and tired of it. I'm ready to say, look, heal yourself and look within, because that's really where the divine is. Because when you're starting to heal yourself, you're going to also help to heal your family, because we lead by example. And then we can finally move past this hold that seems to be over everyone's consciousness because of, orchestrated social engineering and, religious propaganda.
So, yeah, I like your take on it. The only thing that I will say is that while I don't think there is much of an argument left about the religion in the sense of, is this religion the one true religion and such, I do think that there are a lot of people that still deal with the trauma and have these emotional triggers day to day because of it. And what place they are in their deconstruction, deconversion, whatever of their religion, does sometimes require that they go and listen to conversations about this in order to reflect or learn or to make a more informed decision about where they stand on it. So I do think there is some value to the conversation, but not in the sense that like we're changing people's minds by talking to them. I think that there's an apologist community that continually calls and makes the same old tired arguments, and there's an atheist community there to refute those arguments, so that's not the only voice they're hearing.
Yeah,
Right.
I think that
Yeah.
I think there is some value in the conversation, because if my own personal point of view on this whole thing is that the sense of the numinous is something that's built into us. That when we see a beautiful natural sight, a gorgeous rainbow, or I'm a sailor, as you can see from this unfortunate incident behind me. I was on 1530 and the boat tipped over, and I'll put a picture of the boat tipped over right after that picture was taken. But so I'll fade myself out for a second, and you can see that the red spinnaker is. If you could see the whole thing, you'd notice that the boat is on its way to its side. It's blowing pretty hard. But anyway, that's an awesome thing. That sense of wonder involved in just sailing in those conditions, or sailing in the middle of the night. Being 700 miles from anywhere, and you're seeing phosphorescence, and you're being followed by porpoises, and all this beautiful stuff is going around you. You're sitting there gobsmacked at, oh my goodness, isn't this something? And that sense of wonder is within us, and it calls for an explanation. And a lot of people think the explanation are satisfied with God as being that explanation. And I'm of the opinion that we ought to be seeking better explanations, because God is a thought stopper, really. It's oh, well, how come? And the answer is because. And the whole structure of religion is meant to infantilize us and keep us in a place where we're not being skeptical and looking for answers on our own, because that is also a part of our natural ability. We have brains that can look for a deeper reason. We today we'll talk about endorphins. We'll talk about the physiological aspects of those feelings, and like fasting, altered state of consciousness, or some other means of achieving an altered state of consciousness. But there are physical reasons for it. There are physical, natural causes for this. And so I do think that the conversation is worth having with people who want to cling to the God thing. But beyond a certain point, it seems like it's the consequences that matter of what those beliefs are. I mean, you can be an atheist and hold horrible ideas. I mean, there are people in the committee in the community that or people that stake out an atheist point of view that have rather horrific ideas as regards LGBTQ people, as regards politics, as regards this or that and the other thing, and so that's what matters in the real world. That's what matters to me. I'll shut up again.
I think that's beautiful. And I think it's amazing. And I think we need to meet people where they're at and honor their wishes, especially when it comes to their spirituality and practices like that. But on the individual level, absolutely. I think as a group level, I think all organized religion needs to go away. And I don't think until more people realize that it needs to go away, that there's going to be a mass change in the way things go, even politically.
I would say especially politically.
There is that connection.
Yeah. I think the thing is, though, is that people, until they're ready and until we're ready as a society in the bigger picture to let it go, we run the risk of just replacing it with something else. And we have to educate people and teach scientific reasoning and logical thinking as a way to arrive at reasonable answers, rather than reaching for whatever you can imagine to be the truth, which it seems like society has been content with for a long time, and things are changing as with the availability of information becomes more abundant. And so maybe we are ready for people to just start en masse giving up these beliefs. There's a huge thing whenever it comes to religion, especially Christianity, though, that I think, and this is just my personal opinion, but I think that many Christians have severe doubts in the truth of Christianity and a God, but that they fear hell, which doesn't seem reasonable, but I've heard that many times. So it seems to be a thing. And that goes back to what we were talking about with the triggers and things, though, because that is how this grabs a hold of people to begin with, by triggering an emotional response rather than a thoughtful one.
You might even call it a taught trigger. It's like all of the indoctrination in whatever faith is meant to get you to internalize those triggers. You know, it's meant, you're meant to respond to difficult times with a prayer, or you're meant to talk to your priest, or you're meant to process the whole thing through that filter that is taught to you, rather than being educated in the way to frame questions for yourself and do the investigative work necessary to get you to a better place. Try to answer the questions for yourself. Think. Think.
Well, the more I learn about atheism, like in actual practice, the more I have to wonder. Because one of the questions to get on the call was like, if I was like pagan, atheist, you know, what religious, I was like, I have no idea. Because here's what I do.
Okay.
Here's what I love to do. I love them all. I want to take them all in. I want to take all the really good bits that work for me. I want to keep them. And I want to discard the stuff that does not work for me. And to try to maintain some type of neutral ground in communities to where I can interact effectively, honestly, and genuinely to build better, larger communities. Because I think that's what is really needed is networking and the willingness to step out of our comfort zones to talk about things we really don't want to talk about. Like, I hate talking about politics, but I realize I need to talk about politics. And election year is always lit the hell up with the crazy.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at, and I've been following you guys around because this channel, the Skeptic Haven, was actually sent to me by one of the professors that is like within the community, and I think it was the intro video was about cults. You all remember that? You all did like a group cult video to kind of help people realize about cults. I don't remember. Well, maybe it was a week ago. It was about a week or two ago. But anyway, I was like, this is a really cool place. You know, you have like different people on the panel. You're talking about different subjects. And and the chat seems really awesome. And then I went over to Joe's channel and I was like, Joe's really cool. And then let's see who else was in there. It was the Silver Fox I commented about today. Michael, I forgot his name. So I think what
Beverly.
you all are doing here
Michael
is really
Beverly.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's I love what you all are doing here. And I'd like to call back again soon, but I need to go because my husband's standing here with dinner and I need to go eat. Thank you all for letting me talk. And you all
thank you so much for calling in. Really appreciate it. It was a great conversation. And go have some food.
Yeah, my pleasure.
It's awesome.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, that was fun.
Yeah.
You didn't bite too much. Don't be afraid, folks.
No.
The number is 984-789-4787. Get on the line. Get on the show. Let's talk. Let's, get on the horn, as they used to say. Let's have a conversation. This has been fun. This is fun.
Yeah. No, I like that because so this idea of pulling bits that you like from different religions, the good parts, and leaving the supernatural ones out, and things of that sort. I mean, I think they're depending on which bits could be problematic.
Well, of course,
but,
that's where the rubber meets the road, isn't it? No, it's like, are you gonna, if you're keeping the bullshit?
Yeah.
Maybe that's not the best. Maybe that's not the best thing. But learning how to discriminate, well, what's bullshit, what's not, what's a story, what's a simple story, and what is purporting to be literal truth, I think is something that people really need to learn. For a creation story, I really prefer the one that J.R.R. Tolkien dreamed up for the Silmarillion. I think it's really fun. It's the big guy in the sky had a thought one day, and out of his thought came all these other creatures, and he didn't really know what to do with that, so he had them all sing a song, and they sang the universe into existence and all of that stuff. Now, if I were to say that and take that as literal, like, for example, the other story wherein, Yahweh was playing in the mud one day and decided to breathe into one of his little mudmen, and all of a sudden the mudman came alive and said, "What the fuck do I do now?" And he said, "Well, I've got this garden and it needs taken care of. You think you can do that?" He said, "Well, I don't know.
I got these animals,
but and here's some animals that can help you out." It's like, but I can't. No, I can't say that. Rude.
Sorry.
So here's another person. Blood of my blood, flesh of my flesh, and all that stuff. I mean, I don't think that's as good a story. It's not anywhere near as much fun. And plus, there are no elves.
No. I think even the older Mesopotamian stories that the Christian creation story comes from are better than the Christian creation. But me personally, I think my favorite is Odin and the Norse creation story. That one's interesting because it's like physically parts of his body and stuff. Yeah.
Right. Oh, I don't think I'm smart enough. Here's an eye. I'll go down to the root of the tree and hand over my eye to these three chicks that are down taking care of the roots of the trees and all of that stuff. I like the stories. I do like the stories, but I have learned that they're stories in a book. Yeah. They're not the real thing. The real story of physics, the real story of biology, that they're actually demonstrable. You can find evidence for them. I haven't yet found Yggdrasil, or the roots of Yggdrasil, or the Norns, or Odin, or any of these things, or Odin's horse with the 6 legs and all of that other stuff. It's kind of, I don't know.
Yeah, and the natural explanation for the universe is actually just as awe-inspiring if you take the time to look into it and study it a little bit and understand it. If you put it go ahead.
No, I was just going to add, just parenthetically, and there are some things we don't know. We can say,
yeah,
I don't know.
And that's
what
okay.
Was there before the Big Bang? I don't know. We're trying to figure it out.
Yeah. Excuse me. Shoot. So whenever it comes to these things, these stories that we talk about, there can be value in these stories. The problem is when people take these stories and then try to assert them as literal fact about the world around us when it doesn't match the reality we live in. Now, even to that point, that's just a bit of irrational thinking, and people can think whatever they want. But you were right. It's what they then do after that. It's how those stories affect and inform their actions afterwards, because those are just stories. Not the best way to proceed. And another thing I wanted to point out, and it was said in the chat by Johnny a minute ago, is sometimes it is important to there's different ways to address different folks. And sometimes being aggressive is the way to get through to somebody.
Yeah, that's what I was
Sometimes,
saying.
sometimes you got to do, whatever it is to get through to that person. And sometimes you can't get through to that person. And yeah, at that point, getting aggressive and making an enemy out of someone doesn't benefit anyone either. So there's definitely lines that you have to observe and not, and, which is where listening again comes into play, right?
Yeah, and I also have a fairly well-honed bullshit detector. When somebody wants to when somebody wants to engage and talk about, oh, I don't know, let's make up a subject. Feminism, or what was Chuck's big thing was secondary, not physiognomy, secondary something or other. The secondary phenotypes. This guy wanted to talk all about secondary phenotypes, but he had to make a point of putting transphobic bullshit just to be funny.
Is this
and he
over
got
on
his
Donnie's
ass
channel
reamed
you're
up.
talking about?
No,
Oh, no,
well, I don't
okay.
know. Chuck might have. No, this was he called into Skep Talk and got his bell rung by Forrest Valkai, and it was one of the most gorgeous things I've ever seen in my life, because it's like, John Gleason, I think, Scott, Godless Engineer, was on, and like, well, I didn't call in to talk about pronouns. Yeah, well, what you did was pretty goddamn shitty, and we're gonna sell that one first. And John goes, like, yeah, we can get through all that stuff, but we can move on. And Forrest goes, well, I'm not gonna. So they spent a half an hour talking about how shitty it was to make a big deal out of to make a big deal out, and to mockingly use attack and helicopter as pronouns, which is like, so this is what I don't like. I don't like people who will use religion as a pretext to hide their bigotry behind God's skirt. I just want to talk about the number of angels that can dance on the head of a pin. Can we have that discussion? Oh, and by the way, I really think we need to kick all the foreigners out of America. It's like, dude, please. Let's talk about the things really affecting people, not the bullshit that you're doing. When I see some of these folks go into some rooms, it annoys the living daylights out of me, because people are too attuned to wanting to have that debate. Meanwhile, there's bullshit being smuggled in, hiding behind God's little skirt, that is actually damaging to real people in the real world. And that sucks.
Well, that's one of the like, if you notice on my channel, I do speak to theists sometimes, but kind of rarely, at least as the guest on the channel. And when I do have theists come on that I'm not familiar with and haven't really heard all of their rhetoric and positions and all that, one of the first things I say is, okay, we're going to talk about this subject, okay? This isn't an excuse for you to bring in topics about the LGBTQ community or racism or about immigrants. This isn't a chance for you to come and be xenophobic. And if you do those things, if you go down that road when we're here to talk about morality, then I will cut the stream immediately, and that will be the end of it. And that doesn't always work. I've had to boot some people, but I try to, and I feel like, especially a certain corner of the apologist community, the creationist community specifically, usually, not always. But there's a certain little corner that has tried to go and put their bigotry topics, go and start a conversation about religion or something else, and then try to force their bigotry topics into it. And I think they look stupid, and I think that eventually what they're going to find out is just nobody's going to want to speak to them at all, because they can't talk about the topic that we're there to talk about. I mean, I don't care to have any honest conversation about any subject, but I also don't care to tell you, I may not know the answer to that, and let me look it up. Let me ask someone. Let me, whatever. And so therefore, I don't try to speak. I don't try to have arguments about those topics, because it's not going to turn out well. There's no good ending to it when I'm not informed enough to have the discussion, and I don't care to admit that. The bad thing about that is that there are people who sometimes say things, without considering other people's feelings, but may not be the hateful, awful person that falls in this other group. And it's hard sometimes to figure out when to give the benefit of the doubt and try, to have a conversation with somebody who's not been great in the past, who you think may be trying to. It's hard to decide sometimes, but I think that for me anyway, it's easy for me to recognize when they're trying to sneak in some other cause, some other bigoted thing or whatever. And I shut that shit down. I don't put up with that personally, but
well, yeah, and that's I think that needs doing, and shutting down rather vigorously sometimes. Just if there's an opportunity to do a little bit of schooling, then go ahead and do the schooling. If there isn't, if they're just simply going to be jerks about it, then it's perfectly okay to walk away, as far as I'm concerned, because you don't need that shit.
Yeah, no, it doesn't do anybody any good. And again, as creators and people with platforms, we have a responsibility to the audience that's watching, and to not let people come and just say hurtful things or triggering things to our audience. And so it's, the weird thing is you never know. I mean, really, there's been people that'll have perfectly great conversations, and then one day it just jumps off the tracks to crazy town, and they, want to go down that rabbit hole of crazy stuff. And unfortunately it happens. And the really bad thing is that if we took every apologist that had ever, and not that this is what anybody's trying to do, but if we took every apologist that had ever had, some horrible take on some position like that came off as racist, xenophobic, bigoted, or something else, there would probably not be very many left to talk to. And well, so true. You do definitely need to try and school them when you can, but that's not always possible. And recognizing the difference is sometimes tough.
Of course, there's always a possibility that people can change their mind about things. It's not a one and done sort of situation with people that have unreasonable views and bigotries, to realize that, hey, I was wrong, and and I was, and I'm sorry for the hurts that I caused because I was wrong. And there are people that do that. Yeah, and thank goodness there are, because people are generally afraid of what they don't understand. And
Yeah.
it's a piece of the unknown. You don't scary.
Yeah.
It's scary that
I mean, it's
you know if you're
evolutionary.
sitting in a place where just can't process, and empathy fails.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that sometimes there is I mean, especially within YouTube and things, we have trolls and sensationalists and different things within the chat and within both communities, apologists and atheists alike. But and you know, sometimes you have to consider what the secondary cost is to the conversation that you're having, and it's not always apparent. I've been wrong before, and within minutes of being told I was wrong, I was telling people I was wrong, and that my bad, I got it wrong, and let's move on and do better. And you have to, I mean, you don't always know right away that you're wrong, but once you realize you're wrong, lay down your pride, admit that you're wrong, and let's move on. You know, like nobody is ever putting you in a place to where you're irredeemable, you know, like to where you can't change your mind and do better. In fact, from my experience with the atheist community, we want to see that. We want to see people lay down their bad ideas and accept, you know, true ones and honest ones. That's the goal half the time.
It is, but to be honest, there are some conversations, some people that are so deeply dug in that it's just too painful to continue to realize they're
Yeah.
never going to get it. They're just never going to get. And in fact, they're out there proselytizing for really horrific ideas. And you really just, the only thing you can do, like we were talking about earlier, don't bring the bullshit along with you. You've got to attack the bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you have to point it out. I mean,
and you just walk away, and then you just sort of sitting there and pointing and laughing. It's like you call out the bullshit and you point, because otherwise engaging is a waste of everybody's time. It's like it really is a waste of everybody's time and a waste of an awful lot of emotional energy that goes into it. All you wind up doing is feeling crappy. So there are some people I just don't talk to anymore. I just point and laugh. I make up cute names for them and mock them all over the internet. Call that good. I'm sure people do that to me as well, but fine.
Yeah. Something funny. I haven't been doing this for long, just over a year. And I mean, I've been around and aware of the atheist community for a number of years, but I didn't even talk in chat until the last year and a half or so. But it's funny because whenever I first started doing this, I was like, well, I'm going to go start a YouTube channel and I'm going to go argue with theists. That's the plan. I'm going to go have these conversations with theists and we'll get to the bottom of it and I'll expose the bad ideas and it'll all be good. And boy, it sounds good, doesn't it? If only it was that
doesn't
easy.
really work that way now, does it?
No.
Let's see. I think I'll go talk to Darth Dawkins for the umpteenth time. It's like, oh, Jesus. Okay, go ahead. Have fun. You know that you're just going to wind up chasing a precept, chasing around and around a precept drain. So, yeah, go ahead. Have a wonderful time.
Yeah.
And it's in situations like that where if you're going to engage that way, it's my favorite engagement ever was Shannon Q and Darth Dawkins, because Shannon
Oh,
wouldn't
sure.
even let him get to square one. No, I want to talk about the soul. Let's talk about the soul. And he couldn't get her. He couldn't get her into the maze. That
She wouldn't take the bait, would she?
He wouldn't take. No. She just sort of sat there and said, ha ha, and she just started laughing. And he lost.
Shannon's
his
amazing, by the way.
mind. He lost his mind. Oh, it was like, and he went on for days and days and days. It was just hilarious. This was like 2 years ago. It's just so funny. That's sort of how I got to the, oh yeah, okay, this guy's ridiculous, so why not laugh?
Yeah. Well, this whole idea of I'm going to go tell a person a thing, like I'm going to go correct that person, is the wrong idea. First of all, you're only going to get yourself into trouble that way. Trying to, I find that my experience, sure, I have the channel and I'm the one that makes content like 3, 4, 5 times a week, but I learn more than I teach anyone. And, it's, but that's a process too. And the people that are part of this community are happy to come and join you in that process. And many of them know that you're going to do that thing. They know that you're going to learn what's up and get the hang of it. And they see potential in places that you may not expect. And so it's really awesome to watch people, to have experienced a lot of that and still experience it myself, and to watch others do that and go through that process, because it's not what you think it is.
Speaking of which, this is a call-in show. Let's talk. Call in 984-789-4787 is the number. We'd love to talk to you. You can join the conversation. You can have a conversation. You can tell us we're full of shit. You can tell us that. You can tell us whatever you'd like to tell us, and we'll listen, because that's what we're here to do. We are here to talk across borderlines. We're talking about talking right now, and we'd love to hear from you. So call us.
Yeah. Call in about anything. We want to talk to you. Do I have to say something divisive to get someone to call? Like pineapple pizza is the best, or
well, look, I'm not a huge fan of pineapple on pizza, but I think that if you take a little bit of chili powder before you put the pineapple on the pizza and just shove the thing in the oven, take a little bit of chili powder and sprinkle it over the pineapple slices, and then grill the pineapple before you put it on the pizza.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
See? Now
what
you
about
might have something going on there.
Have you tried that? I don't know how it's pronounced. I'm from Kentucky. Tagine or tahine seasoning. You know what I'm talking about? The Indian.
No, I do not.
Spice.
I'm from Maine.
So, yeah, right. So
I know poutine. I know that. It's right next door.
Yeah. I didn't know that one. But yeah, it's a Indian spice that they put it on everything too, from sweets to food and everything. It's good on.
Oh, you're talking about tahini?
That's the name of tahini. Yeah.
Oh, tahini. Yeah. Oh, tahini. Yeah. It's basically sesame butter, and it's delicious. And hummus tahini is fantastic. It's no.
Oh yeah.
Not the stuff.
I love
hummus.
All
right. Trees, try again. Well, there's tahini in hummus.
It's
sesame butter.
I'm pretty sure it's Tajin. It's like a red powder that you sprinkle on stuff, and it's got a it's got a spice, but it's also got like almost a lemon taste that comes through too. And I was thinking, whenever you said chili powder on the pineapple, I was thinking that spice on the pineapple might not be bad either. But if you don't know what it is, it's kind of a pointless conversation. And I'm probably not pronouncing it right.
Yeah, but that's okay. See, we can
Yeah.
call it. You can call in and swap recipes. You can tell us what the name of Indian spices are. You can tell us about about your journey to Tibet over the Himalayas or something. You can talk about anything. We're just here to hear your thoughts about skepticism, about talking across borderlines.
Yeah. Would love to talk to anybody that wants to call in about anything. That's kind of what we're doing. Just here to, yeah. But
you can just let Joe and I riff on and get into spicy talk.
So yeah, I had a, whenever these difficult conversations come up and stuff with especially when you get folks that you have a history of saying some horrible things, so not that I invite those people, but a lot of times I do like open panels and things, and so you can have somebody show up and I of course don't have anybody pulling bios on every person that jumps in the room, So it's a tricky landscape sometimes, because there's just dishonest players in the game. It's not a level playing field always, and that is the difference, though, between somebody who just wants to have a conversation and has a bad take, and somebody who has an agenda to come and disrupt and cause harm and problems. And it's not always clear the difference between the two, unfortunately. And I personally try to err on the side of safety, I would rather not take a chance on having a bunch of stupid stuff spewed if I'm aware of a reason for it. But again, you never know when the conversation's going to go somewhere weird, because so many times I'll be, trucking right along talking to somebody, and then all of a sudden they're like, well, yeah, I think that all that magic stuff is real, and that, whatever.
That's kind of why call-in shows are fun, because you never know what's coming down the pike from general public. It's just sort of a wide open spaces.
It's important to say, though, that and I know that you agree with this, but we separate the believer from the belief. While I talk about people's odd and strange beliefs or whatever, I still understand that there's people that believe those things, and just like I say that anyone else, that any other person is people, they're people too. So I try to understand where they're coming from, because I've had some of those bad beliefs before too, and you hear some strange things sometimes, and it's hard to not sometimes just throw your hands up and be like, what the hell are you talking about, man? But I try to be a little more contained than that, I'm getting better.
Sure. let's see. Our producer has a question. For the show, any thoughts on how to talk to your wife about ghosts and telepaths, and now as astrology comments by her? How do I even start that kind of conversation? I don't know.
I wouldn't start it.
When I was married, I did not have to have that conversation. So I really don't know what I would do. That's a good question, because there are what used to be called as mixed relationships, a believer and a non-believer, or like a Mormon and a Roman Catholic, or a split family in that sense. I imagine that the conversations are difficult.
So my response would be, it's not always good to just go on and jump into that conversation and question them, because especially people with some of it sounds like there's a wide variety of beliefs going on there. They're probably going to become defensive. So rather than jump in and say, hey, all that crazy shit you say all the time, that ain't true, that's probably not the best approach. But
it's probably not the best approach.
But what I would suggest is, whenever those things come up, like they say something about a ghost, say, well, you believe that ghosts exist and that they're real, and then follow that with a kind of Greek epistemology approach of why do you feel like that, and how sure are you that ghosts actually exist, and then maybe over time, even because it's a loved one, you have to kind of be careful how you proceed. But I would over time, address that and say, well, why, try to get to why they believe that. And as you go, insert little facts about, well, people have been hunting for ghosts forever and never have confirmed to find one. There's stories, but there's no demonstrable evidence that any such thing exists. Now, ghosts, I would say, is probably the hardest thing in that list to talk about, because some people, even atheists I run into a lot, still believe in ghosts of some form. Not a lot of them, but some. And so the thoughts on, what was the other things? Ghost and astrology, and there was something else.
Ghost, astrology, and telepaths.
Yeah. As for those last two, the telepaths and astrology, I don't necessarily think you have to be as careful about, because I think you can show the pretty easily. You can break down, hey, people used to look at the stars and they came up with ideas, and now they use it as a scam to take people's money in some cases. There's what effect, we know how the stars and planets and everything work. What effect does that star millions of light years away have on anything? And just because they look like they're in that shape, they're not all out there in that shape. They're just, that's your view. That's your 2D view of a 3D object.
I can disappear.
Yeah. Stephanie's the poltergeist around here.
I am. Well, yeah, I can throw shit too if you want, but not, whatever. I don't know. I would think that you could take, somebody in the chat. Johnny Bickle said maybe the Anthony Magnum Bosco approach.
Yeah.
Well,
Street epistemology.
not with intent, but try to clarify what I'm an Aries. Well, what does that mean to you, being an Aries? And get into the nuts and bolts of the conversation, and then get into the nuts and bolts of with mentalist or psychic phenomenon. Maybe get into the nuts and bolts of, well, is it just that you are making good guesses, like a cold reading or something like this, or how does that work? Just try to have the conversation before you say that's all a bunch of malarkey and horseshit, even though it actually is malarkey and horseshit. But don't start off that way. I wouldn't think, because obviously the person is holds these ideas, and hey, maybe she'll convince you to start. Well, I'm a Sagittarius. I guess we're we're now the fire sign theater.
There's this is a person that you're around a lot too, so you don't have to do this all at once. Drop a couple questions here and there at first, and find out where you're at. Find out exactly what it is that she believes within that, and then what you're tackling. I think that would be the best way. And I do agree, though, Anthony Magnabosco, the street epistemology approach would probably be the best suited for that. That way you're not causing a confrontation in a place you have to sleep.
Right. That's right. Don't be doing that. It's like, no. Yeah. It's like, by the way, I said fire sign theater because Aries and Sagittarius. I'm a Sagittarius, for what it's worth. There was a radio troupe in the 60s that did absurdist comedy, and really quite funny absurdist comedy for the day, called the Fire Sign Theater. There were these 4 guys, and they were all fire signs. There was a Sagittarius and Aries. What are the other 2? I can't remember what they are. But yeah. Check them out if you want to know what all the brouhaha is about.
Yeah. Yeah, there's
oh my God. Nick Danger, third
at
eye.
Least with those ones, I find that a lot of people that talk about ghosts and astrology and some more of those like fringe ideas like that, like if they're not actively into it, they just bring up stuff about it, that they don't have a big grip on that being actual reality. They're just the ghost thing's a little different sometimes, but with the others, they're usually just like how people throw around the word karma, and what people call karma in America isn't actually how karma is practiced, but it's but yeah, I would try to avoid a confrontation, and I hate that word now. I've heard that one a number of times, but it's karma. And I feel like karma is kind of like religious in that there's a proper meaning to that word, and then there's like the colloquial one that we use culturally, and that they're different. And I agree, Sumami. Karma's got some issues when you get into the actual religion.
And then there's Dharma, which is even more crazy. That's what the Bhagavad Gita is all about. You got Krishna, the purple guy, rather the blue guy, as the charioteer, stopping in the middle before Arjuna Krishna goes, "Okay, Arjuna, it's time for the battle. Blow the horn." And Arjuna goes, "Hey, I really don't want to. I mean, all those people over there, they're my cousins. And the guy who taught me how to fight and all of this stuff, and why should I do that?" And so Krishna explains, "Well, you've got to do that because you are a warrior. And it's not wrong because that's your dharma. That's your duty. It's like, you got to go kill your cousins because that's your..." I mean, there's a lot of fun stuff in the story, but it's still kind of creepy. Yeah, let's have a great big war.
Yeah, like that. It reminds me of Jesus telling people to hate their mother and father and brother and sister, and you know, there's always that. Oh yeah, be love and peace and happiness, unless it comes to me, and then you better hate some bitches. Like,
Well,
yeah.
the other thing Wes might try is reciting Robert Burns' prayer, from ghoulies and ghosties and long-leggedy beasties and things that go bump in the night. Good Lord, deliver us. See how that goes over. But no, that's probably not a serious suggestion. And best,
Yeah.
best thing you could do with that is do it in a Scottish accent, a bad Scottish accent, just so.
I wish I had one of those. I don't think I can do Scottish though. It's just going to come out wrong.
I
It's all going to
can't
come out
do
as
this.
bad British, and probably be offensive to someone.
There was a kid in my high school class who was a foreign student from Scotland, and when you have those get up in front of the class and recite poetry. This was, I don't know whether it was a theater thing or it was English and English poetry, drama, that kind of deal, and you had to get up and memorize a speech. And he got up, and his name was Duncan MacLean. Got up, and he said, I'm going to recite something out of my heritage, and you won't understand a word of it." And that is terrible, terrible, botched, mixed Irish, Scottish thing.
It was close.
But he was right. He recited some Robert Burns in the original and didn't understand a word of it. I mean,
there's a moose in the hoose. Let it out. Let it oot.
Moose in the hoot. So let it oot. That's Canadian. Yeah. Come on now. That's Nova Scotian.
Yeah.
Which, of course, Nova Scotia, close enough, right?
Right. It's almost there.
Nova Scotia.
I've always been really bad with other accents, but I mean, I live among people. Most of the people in Kentucky have a thicker accent than I do. Even my girlfriend and my kid both have a thicker Kentucky accent than I do, and I have trouble with accents that I haven't heard many times because I'm just not familiar with hearing that in real use. I mean, like you watch on TV and see someone use an accent, and it's usually like it's purposely done in a way that you can understand and things like that. Whereas the actual dialects of those languages are sometimes a bit different, depending on where the person originates. And yeah, I don't have an accent. You do. Yeah, that's
right.
That's funny.
Exactly. You talk funny.
Yeah, I don't. The only time I hear my accent is whenever I say the letter I in something, because I don't say I say ah, like pa and sky.
Well,
sky. Yeah.
And there's a great little tune by the wicked good band up here in Maine. State of Maine song. It goes, we say Augusta, not Augusta. Don't say Buster, we say Busta. State of Maine. It's pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. There's a lot of
it's
like
fun. It's called the Bangor is called Bangor, but Augusta is Augusta.
all right. That R sound on the end of A's, that drives me nuts.
Yeah, and you never can tell where it's going to be. You never can tell exactly where it winds up. You want to talk wicked good.
Yeah.
You got to figure that out, Buster. There are, and there are several different accents in Maine, just like there are several different accents in Massachusetts. Boston, and then there's the southeastern Massachusetts and Rhode Island, where they say coffee, and they don't have fraps, they don't have milkshakes, they have cabinets. But it's like there are lots and lots of different little regional accents in New England, partially because it was the first area settled.
Yeah.
Just like there are all kinds of different ways of speaking English in England. Just all sorts of different ways.
Yeah.
All sorts of received pronunciation.
It's
almost phony, made up.
Yeah, I always feel like that when some of those awful comments about speak American and speak English and all that stuff, like, what exactly do you mean? Because there's not one set way of doing even that, only talk to you the way you accept. Like there's a lot of I think it's whenever you get into, especially in the United States, a lot of the slang terms and things that we use that have especially like the metaphorical ones and stuff. I think that's when you get confusing to people who aren't familiar with it, because well, for instance, you in New England there, like you use the term wicked and busta. We don't call people buster or busta or use wicked at all here, unless it's a referring to the way that someone in New England talks. So there's words that are unique to those dialects, and I guess it's not necessarily the word, but the usage of the word.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you don't call a coffee milkshake a coffee cab.
No, I don't.
No,
Yeah, that one's unique for sure. To me, anyway. But my cultural experience is very limited.
Yeah, well, before we close it out, and call again for calls. But before we close it out, I want to get back a little bit to the whole borderlines thing, because we're in a presidential election year, and we're going to be talking about this, and I kind of want to touch on the founding of the nation and the borderlines that had to be crossed in charting in 18th century men, white men of property, getting together in Philadelphia and crafting a document that was meant to address very, very different colonies that were now the free and independent states, and how they were going to form a more perfect union. And one of the first things, of course, that comes up is, what do we do about religion? And I just want to touch on this a bit because I think it ties together a bunch of threads. In that, within the generational memory of all of the English colonists was the experience of the English Revolution, the English Civil War, right? The English Civil War, where they killed a king, had a commonwealth, restored a king, mostly on the basis of religion, because of disputes between a Catholic monarch, or a monarch that was a supposed papist, as the word went, and a Protestant monarch. So this is within, like, those people's great-grandfathers either lived through it or emigrated to North America during it, and they did so in New England as Puritans or as separatists. The separatists being the Pilgrims, the Puritans being the Massachusetts Bay Company, Pennsylvania the Quakers, Maryland the Catholics, Virginia the Church of England, the Anglicans, Georgia the Methodists. And they had to figure out, well, how do we have a government that isn't destined to go through the same kind of struggle that our great granddaddies had to go through in the old country? And so they saw the failures. They're also looking at this in the context of the Scottish Enlightenment, John Locke, David Hume, those people, and Rhode Island, religious freedom. Thank you, Tsunami, because that Rhode Island, the state of Rhode Island, was the first place under British rule that established religious freedom as its founding principle. So this idea was there, and now we're in an election season that seems to have a bunch of people with the notion that this was a nation founded by God, and those people back then had quite a different idea, because there was witch God. That's why there is a clause in the First Amendment to the Constitution that says there shall be no establishment of religion. Congress shall make no law regarding this establishment of religion. So it seems like, 240 some years ago, he had a damn good idea about how to talk across border lines, and that is to say, we just don't build them. That in this respect, we are all going to be operating without those borders. I just wanted to say that, get that in there. So, you got any thoughts on the matter there, Joe? Or anybody have any thoughts on the matter they want to call and talk about?
Yeah, and yeah, please call in if you have anything to add. But I think that this is one of those cases where religion backfired on itself, because it demonstrated to those people that there were all these different beliefs, and no way to point at any group of people and say, yours is the right one, we're going to use that, because they had just escaped this, and so I think that I think that recognizing that we don't have to use religion as a basis for anything was one of the few times that American leaders have decided that correctly. You know, they uh, they realized that in escaping religious persecution, it wasn't going to be beneficial to then set up a religious persecution here, which is what would have happened by having a state-sponsored religion that was the basis for everything. You know, I keep saying, you know, sorry. They
I know. That's okay.
they yeah, you know. Uh,
I know. Oh, I know.
but I think I think it's one of the few times, especially going back that far in history, where uh, religion exposed itself and showed its hand, and people realized that instead of being exclusive and leaving all these other people out, that we had to come together and work together and set that aside as far as the founding of our country. And I know that many Christians disagree with that narrative, but I think historical documents support that.
Free Badger points out there is a long record of religious persecution of minority religions in the United States, and that's true. Say that, you know, we certainly didn't live up to for hundreds of years, like 400 in the case of Africans first brought here in chains. We haven't lived up to the King called the promissory note of the Declaration and the Constitution. Been bad at that. Again,
Yeah.
Well, I don't know again, but there's with that with those principles, there's a possibility of perfecting it. I think also, this is another thing that I just thought of, was a lot of the opposition to, you know, a lot of the sentiment, well, Christians, vote for me this time, you'll never have to vote again. Donald Trump said that yesterday. Just vote for me now and you'll never have to vote again. It's like, you know, okay, you know, well, that seems like an interesting promise. But I think that particularly the branch of Christianity that believes in that's very Calvinist in its belief, right? That there's the elect and then there's everybody else. We're all going to die and this world is irredeemable. That runs counter to the kind of hope that humans can build a better society for themselves. It's kind of the the Tower of Babel thing.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. I think that there's certain instances throughout history where we see those things for what they are, because even now, like, the world has become a smaller place because of technology and information. And whereas for a long time, if I said I was a Christian and you said you were a Catholic, and somebody said they were a Mormon or whatever, there was no real, maybe a little bit with the Mormons, a little bit of stigma there, but those are all American religions.
Well, they ran the Boy Scouts.
And then yeah. and then as the world got smaller, and the Muslim religion started to become more popular across the world, even people then immediately turned around and rejected that and wanted to persecute those people based on their religion. And while I think all those different versions, flavors, whatever of religion have their bad parts and promote bad things in different ways, this exclusivity that religion itself and each denomination of religion for that matter promotes most of the time, not always, it's not like that with every church across the land, but this exclusivity that for us and not you, and we've got something better coming and you don't, and we look down on you, and it expanded then to appear to be this American exceptionalism idea that gets thrown around a lot. And I think that you can't. Hitchens once told a story about if I was born as a baby in this Middle Eastern country, then I would believe these things and all that. And that's absolutely true, because I think sociology shows us that it's a cultural condition that we adopt these things from our culture. And so in one way, religious persecution has also been kind of interweaved with xenophobia a lot. And just like someone says, "Oh, I don't like Muslims." Well, what's a Muslim look like? Can you tell me? Like, what's a yeah, yeah, and it's those things that I think that people, like we talked about earlier, are scared to understand, and then so they try not to. They try to draw those lines solid and as close to their in group as possible, causing this violent tribalism we see taking place in the name of religion all across the world, and that does include the United States. So yeah, I think we have to, like you said though, the best way to deal with borderlines is to not try to draw them in the first place, right? I mean, let's quit trying to say this is my group here and that's your group there, and let's just all be people and do what's best for people. That'd be too easy though.
Well, that would be pretty. Well, yeah, it's easy, hard,
Yeah, right. It's hard now, but should be an easy idea.
Yeah. Yeah. As may be obvious from my looks, I'm one of them boomers. I know it's terrible, but I'm one of them boomers. And one of my favorite composers and lyricists is a woman by the name of Joni Mitchell, and she wrote a song about this. I'm going to read the lyrics. I'm not going to attempt to play Joni. Everybody looks so ill at ease, so distrustful, so displeased. Running down the table, I see a borderline, a barbed wire fence, strung tight, strung tense, prickling with pretense. Borderline. Why are you smirking at your friend? Is this the night when all well-wishing ends? All credibility revoked? Thin skin, thick joke? We blame it on the smoke? Every bristling shaft of pride, church or nation, team or tribe, every notion we subscribe to is just a borderline. Good or bad, we think we know, as if thinking. All convictions grow up along a borderline. Smug in your jaded expertise, you scathe the wonder world, and you praise barbarity. In this illusionary place, this scared, hard-edged rat race. All liberty is laced with borderlines. Every income, every age, every fashion-plated rage, every measure, every gauge creates a borderline. Every stone thrown through glass, every mean street's gas, every swan caught on the grass will draw a borderline. You snipe so steady, you snub so snide, so ripe and ready to diminish and deride. You're so quick to condescend, my opinion. All you deface, all you defend, just a borderline. Another borderline. Borderline. Good song. Pretty song too. Scathing lyrics. It came out in 1992. Was last original albums. Still speaks to me. Even if she is Canadian, cross that borderline. Saskatchewan,
Yeah, we. I think a human thing. We like to try and put everything in its box, right? We like to have this box and put everybody where they go in their boxes. But the problem is, and I mean, that's not a great idea to begin with. But then when you go and decide that this box is better than that box, that's when you start running into the bad stuff, really. And maybe it takes that to realize that you shouldn't have tried to find boxes to put everybody in to begin with. I hope that made sense.
It did. Made sense to me. Well, I looks like nobody wants to talk to us, Joe. This is a thing. And our call screeners left us, so maybe we should talk about what's coming up next for you, Joe. What do you got going on your channel? By the way, everybody needs to subscribe to the Kentucky Atheist. Gotta have that.
Yeah. Well, I've started a call-in show over there, and we do that on Mondays on my channel. And tomorrow I'll be joined with Blaster Master. Next week, Stephanie will be over at my place, and we'll be taking calls over there. And it's been a mixed bag so far, right? But other than that, we've been talking politics on Wednesday or Thursday, depending on Robin's schedule. She likes to get out there and talk about a lot of those things. And I think there's a lot of important things going on that people just don't know. So we've been trying to cover a lot of that. I've been trying to release, recorded stuff. I mean, pretty much any day of the week, there's going to be something come on my channel. Maybe it might be limited to members only some days, but I try to put something out there every day.
Well, I think I've got to, before I do any touting of my own stuff, I think I need to thank the patrons of Skeptic Haven. Paul Cammish, Karen Butcher, Pock, Helen Greene, Logan Fisher, Amanda McLeod, Eric Ozols, Rion, Deneen Murphy, Dan D, Michael Wiseman, Sonny Shell, Aaron Coalson, and Phil Calderone. And I need to thank producer Wes and Bree Badger, who's our call screener today, and all you good people in the chat for stopping by. Our call from our caller, the Occult Examiner, that was all kinds of fun. And as for me, I have a small channel at Steffi Cath that I have been neglecting of late somewhat, although I did just post an updated version of the piece I did on the channel that I share hosting duties with Bree McCune, Amber Bellerad, Carly Chardonnay-Webb, called The Transpositions, where we cover news of import to about trans people. And we're all trans, and we give a somewhat of a unique perspective as a news show that we do at midnight UTC, which would be Friday, but in the United States anyway, it would be 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 Central, 6 Mountain, Pacific. I like to say the UTC because then you can do the plus or minus and figure it all out. Anyway, yeah. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. Oh, the story I did on that I posted on my channel, updating the my thing, my segment on the transpositions was about Elon Musk and his daughter, Vivian Wilson, and how the man has spent 2 years not being able to say her name because he's convinced that his son is dead. Not a good look, Elon. And who's he having the discussion with? Jordan B. Peterson. He's talking with Jordan Peterson about how his son is dead. His daughter, is very much alive. She's 20 years old, and he has been on her ass publicly 2 years. And she hasn't said a word until 4 days ago. When after he did that interview with Peterson, he just said, hey, fuck this guy. Let him have it with both barrels. So check that out either on the transpositions or on my channel. It's the latest video I posted. So yeah, support what you believe in. Become a patron by going to patreon.com/Skeptic Haven. And again, thanks to producer Wes and Paul Screener and all you guys.
Yeah, thanks everybody for having me on.
This is Skeptic Haven. Let's talk.